Hello, YouTube. My name is Alan, and I'm here on Heavy Metallurgy today to review not just one album, not just two albums, but three albums all at once.
Are you waiting for a friend? Did you wonder?
Yes, we've gotten to the end of the year, and a lot of good stuff has been coming out here in November and December. Few things are at risk of slipping through the cracks. So I thought I'd do sort of a combined review and highlight a few albums that haven't been touched on just yet. This will be a good way to sort of wrap up my reviews for the year 2023 and to let everybody know about some cool albums that have recently come out that you might want to add to your Christmas list or ask Santa to bring down the chimney for you, but only if you've been good this year. All right, up first is the new album from High Spirits. This one is called Safe on the Other Side. It was released on High Roller Records on November 24th. Most folks, I think, will be familiar with High Spirits. This is essentially a one-man project done by the original heavy metal professor, Chris Maycock. Chris, of course, has had a lot of projects over the year, and High Spirits is kind of, his, traditional hard rock metal kind of hybrid. All the songs are, very fun, uplifting, upbeat kind of songs, big choruses, everything's, right there up front in your face. The material doesn't tend to be particularly heavy, but it's extremely catchy. It's the kind of stuff you want to listen to when you're in a good mood, or when you need to get in a good mood, if you're kind of having a little bit of those holiday blues. Safe on the Other Side doesn't offer anything new or different in the High Spirits formula. If you've got any of the other High Spirits albums, you have a good idea of what to expect here. This is the fifth album, and Chris is very much staying the course. And while it's easy to say this is just another High Spirits album, I think it's important to recognize how well Chris delivers on this style. One of the things I've noticed over time that's kind of a secret to his success is in the vocal and lyric patterns. He tends to have relatively short lines of lyrics, and the last word tends to repeat the rhyming pattern a lot. In terms of rhyming poetry patterns, it's like an AAA type structure where the last word of every single line keeps rhyming. It makes the music very snappy. An example would be, High Spirits taking flight. Why does it seem so bright? Out in the moonlight. Just, every word just kind of, keeps rhyming. It really helps the music stick in your brain, crawls inside your ear, and just kind of wants to stay there. And puts a smile on your face because it's this, very simple, but, easy to pick up on and sing along to kind of vibe. The album opener, In the Moonlight, is probably the best song that Chris has done with this project since back on the first full-length album with the opener on this one, Another Night in the City. It's one of my favorite songs from that entire decade. And In the Moonlight is right there with it. Just an absolutely, great up-tempo song. Hits all the right buttons that you want from this kind of music.
Can't you see? It's the last place that I'll be. So go out and wait for me. I'm in the moonlight. Whoa.
High Spirits, no, it's not, flat out headbanging music whatsoever, but it's going to appease folks that want, that, nice, clean, crisp, hard rock, heavy metal sound. And, don't overlook that, there are a few nice touches on the album here and there as well. For example, Lonely Nights has, kind of a very subtle organ, line in the back that makes it a little bit reminiscent of something like Perfect Strangers era Deep Purple. It doesn't dominate the music or anything. It's just worked in the background with the chorus a little bit, and it adds a nice little extra, dash of flavor to the album.
But I'll never let you go. Lonely nights in the darkness, going nowhere. Lonely nights.
All right, so that was album number one. Moving on to album number two on today's list. This one comes from a new German band called Kerrigan, and the album is entitled Bloodmoon. This was another high roller release. This one came out a couple of months ago, back in September, but it kind of slipped through the cracks for a lot of folks. Other than getting a mention over on Banger TV, I have not heard folks discussing this album, and having played it a lot for the last month, I figured it was time to circle back and make sure that folks were aware of this kind of underrated gem from late in 2023. As I mentioned, a German project, and it appears to be mainly a two-man act, a little unusual for this style of metal. Kerrigan is operating in a new wave of traditional heavy metal vibe, leaning towards a little bit more of the smoother, slicker sound. If you want some quick comparisons for the sound, they're a bit similar to Sumerlands. If you enjoyed, this one from 2022, Kerrigan is in the same vein. There may be a little bit more towards the new wave of traditional heavy metal sound than that. So maybe file them somewhere in between Sumerlands and Night Deeping, that kind of style. They're not as harsh or metallic or as headbangy as, say, a Riot City or a Traveler or anything like that. And they're not really going in an epic metal direction like Smolder, Visigoth, Eternal Champion, or those bands. And they're kind of finding their own sweet spot and sticking with it and delivering very, very well. There's a lot of variation on the album, but all within that same particular style. Standout tracks include things like the album opener, Eternal Fire. Some of the songs do vary things a little bit. As I was saying, Bloodmoon, the title track, has a good, catchy chorus to it. Child of Sin is a little bit more up-tempo. They pick up the pace, but it's not getting into, again, serious headbanging. There's a lot of focus on keeping the sound pretty smooth and pretty clean throughout all the tracks here. So yeah, Kerrigan's Bloodmoon has been a really surprisingly good listen. It just didn't get a lot of love here late in the year. High Roller Records notoriously doesn't have the best distribution in the United States, which, does hurt the visibility for some of these releases. So, hey, if you're working for a distro out there and you're looking for something that you can offer that not many others are offering in America, talk to High Roller and try to get some of their releases. They always put out a lot of quality stuff each year. It stinks having to buy them and import them from Europe because international postage is nobody's friend these days. Kerrigan's Bloodmoon, be very interested to see what they follow this up with, if they expand to sort of a full band lineup, or if it's going to remain largely a two-person project. But yeah, an excellent piece of new wave of traditional heavy metal for the latter months of 2023. Last, but certainly not least, in this set of reviews is the latest album from Ohio's Destructor. This one is titled Blood, Bone, and Fire, and it was released on November 24th via Shadow Kingdom Records. Destructor has been around for a long time, but they haven't been the most prolific band. They go back to the 80s Cleveland heavy metal scene and released their first album on Auburn Records, right there alongside bands like Shock Paris and Breaker. Destructor's always been a bit heavier and more metallic than a lot of the other bands on that label. And they only got the one release out during the 80s, but this was a band that came back and reformed in the early 2000s. And since then, they've put out about 5 more albums, although they've been spaced out at sort of odd intervals. Sometimes there's multiple years that go by. A couple of the albums have come out in back-to-back years. It's been about 6 years since the previous Destructor album came out, but in November we did get Blood, Bone, and Fire, and it is exactly what you would expect. This band does not deviate from their formula very much. And if you're not familiar with their formula, it is straight ahead, pounding US metal. They kind of find that sweet spot where they have a very aggressive sound, but they don't stray into thrash territory. The songs don't have a thrash structure at all. They tend to play pretty fast, but not fast enough to be considered speed metal either. So they're sticking to just that traditional US power metal sound, pushing the envelope on the speed and the aggression as much as they can without bleeding over into those other genres. And they've had this formula pretty consistently on previous albums, such as Sonic Bullet. Again, if you need some other points of reference for context, Destructor has always reminded me quite a bit of Panzer, just a little more angry and forceful sounding. So take Panzer when they're having maybe a really bad day and just really need to bang some things out, and you got the right idea. Another good reference point would be Steel Assassins, excellent and underrated War of the Eight Saints. These two bands are good comparison points, not just because of the style of the music, but also in the vocal department. The vocals are very reminiscent of Harry Conklin or John Falzone from these projects, where he's got that kind of good, gruff-sounding vocal. It's not harsh in any sense. It's not an extreme metal vocal, but just a little more bottom-heavy, a little gruff, maybe just a little gravel mixed in there to give the songs really some extra weight and really, really good texture to them. I've always enjoyed the vocal performances delivered on the Destructor albums. And yeah, these songs, these are straight out headbangers. This is meant to be turned up loud, get the blood pumping, get your fist in the air, and just have you bang that head that won't be banged. Absolutely. It's very straightforward. There's very little nuance to it whatsoever. They do a thing and they do it extremely well. So yes, if you're looking for something to sort of, help you shake off, the winter doldrums, get you excited and be able to play at maximum volume, the new Destructor album will definitely fit the bill.
Allegiance to thy holy belief, shall to perish and to grieve, kneel and bow, a slave to religion's throne.
If I have one nitpick about the album, I'd say the cover art, while not bad, I don't think it's very representative for this style of metal. It looks like a piece of artwork that Shadow Kingdom or a similar label would use for one of their 80s anthology demo collection issues. As the cover art for a brand new album from this band that really focuses on a very heavy, forceful style, not really sure the cover art fits quite right. I think I would have saved this piece of art in my back pocket, used it for an anthology release that the label was going to do in the near future, maybe come up with something a little different for Destructor. That doesn't affect the quality of the music whatsoever. It's just sort of an odd visual representation. If you looked at this, you'd probably get a very different idea of what it sounds like. Once you put it in and hit play, it's going to be like, oh, it's not what this looked like whatsoever. But yeah, very strong album to kind of close out the year with. Destructor's Blood, Bone, and Fire. And I'm really hoping that people don't get that name mixed up with the Autopsy album from this year. A lot of blood and bone and ash and fire and altars and blood and stuff. The album titles are a little unfortunately similar. The Autopsy album was great too, but that, of course, is a completely different genre. All right, that is going to wrap up not only this review, but my set of reviews for 2023. Hope you have enjoyed these this year. Check out these new albums from High Spirits, Kerrigan, and Destructor. Look for more reviews coming from other folks contributing to Heavy Metallurgy in the near future. And of course, while 2023 is coming to an end, 2024 is right around the corner, and there's already a lot of great releases being advertised for the winter months of 2024. Off the top of my head, I know there's a new Riot album coming, and there's also a new one from Chapel of Disease, one of my favorite sort of German death metal bands of the past 10 years or so. So yes, there's going to be some good stuff coming in 2024. Hope you'll stay tuned into Heavy Metallurgy and see what happens after the new year. Until next time, everybody take care, have a great holiday season, and as always, keep banging your head. Just not on Christmas Eve, because you got to be in bed before Santa comes, otherwise he won't leave you anything. See ya.
Never give in, never let go, never die. always believe and stay true.